It's a foggy morning on the Irish Sea. The year is 2016. A woman dressed in full white wedding attire stands at the prow of a boat. She holds a bouquet of red roses in one hand and a candle in the other. She closes her eyes. She says her vows aloud. And with the stormy clouds imposing, the whistling wind in her veil, and the choppy waves crashing beneath her, she officially becomes wife to her husband Jack. It was a nuptial event unlike many, but all too befitting for the unconventional couple, and particularly the groom. You see, Jack had been a pirate in the 18th century. He'd been dead for over 300 years. This isn't a metaphor. It's not a scene from a movie. This really happened. Amanda first met Jack one evening while lying in bed. She'd become very involved in the spiritual community since the death of her 3-month-old son years prior. Agnostic before that, she began researching different practices of faith, searching for something to believe in, if there was anything at all to believe in. Was there life after death? Was her son still existent? Amanda found paganism and zeroed in quickly to Wicca. After only a brief period of time dabbling in spiritualism and Wiccan practices, it became clear that Amanda had a natural talent for it, specifically when it came to communicating with energy and spirit on the other side. And this is exactly what she was up to the night John Robert Teague entered her life. She would say she suddenly felt an energy of someone unfamiliar, and so she ignored him. This would happen again. She would ignore him again. Finally, she felt him a third time. This time, she opened herself to communicating with whoever this was. "I'm dead, you know." The words she picked up made her smirk. "Yes, I know that," she replied. Regular communication ensued. His name was John Robert, though he went by Jack. He was born in Haiti, had become a pirate. He'd been hanged for thievery in 1753. He liked to gamble, though wasn't necessarily good at it. When he presented an image of himself to Amanda, she saw the visual of Jack Sparrow, Johnny Depp's character from Pirates of the Caribbean. This wasn't how he looked, she knew that, but he was aware of her fascination with the movies, and so that's how he showed himself to her, to give her something recognizable and to be more receptive. In a later past life regression, she would actually have the opportunity to see what he had looked like. Definitely not Jack Sparrow, but handsome enough. Over the course of months, they conversed. But you can never be too safe when it comes to things you cannot see, right? Amanda kept a slight guard up for the most part until one day, when he would give her a piece of information to validate he was who he said he was. He told her they were actually connected by blood. If she went back in her family tree far enough, she would find the name Teague. Curious, she researched his claim, and to her amazement, a few generations back, there was a family name she'd never heard discussed: Teague. Over the course of 6 months, Amanda and Jack talked, sharing details about their lives, growing friendlier, closer every day, until one day she realized she had grown very fond of him. She had begun to have romantic feelings for Jack. But that was crazy. No one had ever done that. How would that even work? "We could be together, you know," Jack would tell her. And so, Amanda began her research. She began talking with her fellow spiritualists, voices she trusted in the community. And as she would discover, yes, it was possible. Some even admitting that they had been in relationships with ghosts. The two began to date. According to Amanda, they weren't too unlike other couples. They went on dates, traveled together, talked into the wee hours of the morning, had quarrels. They also began to grow intimate, possibly due to Amanda's more traditional Catholic childhood, perhaps due to her sacrificing the possibility of welcoming any potential living suitors into her life due to her current relationship. She wanted something more, something a bit more serious. "We could get married, you know," Jack told her. Amanda would tell reporters that things began to quickly fall apart between her and Jack following their wedding. She would learn things about him that would change everything. She grew increasingly sick, So sick, in fact, she would come very close to dying. Jack was controlling, possessive. At one point, he would even threaten to kill her if she ever tried to leave him. But what choice did she have? After a headline-grabbing relationship and precedent-setting wedding, Amanda did what many people do in a toxic marriage. She got a divorce. Welcome back to the Paranorm Girl podcast. I am your host, Kristen. As strange as Amanda's story sounds, hers is not some single outlier. Numerous societies and spiritual communities embrace the concept of relationships with, and yes, even marriage, to the dead. From China and Japan to the Sudan to France, and even here in the States. This is often a serious matter and is not some modern quirk or trend born out of internet folklore or TikTok confessionals. Ghost marriage has been practiced for thousands of years in some places, and it can be an incredibly important part of some people's lives and a family's lineage. But while it may be an important staple for some communities, ensuring a family's name, ensuring ancestor worship, and a person's heritage, what about when it comes to stories like Amanda's? It had nothing to do with furthering a family line. It, in fact, went against traditional and historical expectations for her culture. It's easy enough to look at Amanda's case and call bullshit, and many people have, calling her crazy, claiming she was only doing it for publicity or her 15 minutes of fame. But if I've learned anything in the almost 5 years I've been doing this show, nothing is quite so easy and simple as the conclusions made via public opinion. There's always more to find if you're willing to dig. And so, let's dig together. Let's take a closer look at some cases of ghost relationships, its history, its controversy, and then I want to take some time before we wrap today to talk about possible reasons behind these taboo pairings between the living and the dead. Let's start with ancient origins and how this concept looks across the societies who have practiced it. Ghost marriage does not fall under any previously stated definition of marriage proposed by anthropologists over time, and we will see that in action here in a moment when we go through the known differences from culture to culture. Ghost marriage is also a very rare form of matrimony, which makes the following examples of it all the more fascinating. In China, this practice has been traced back to the Han Dynasty between 206 BC and 220 AD. Original purposes behind Chinese ghost marriage remain mostly unknown, though, let's be real, most everything humanity has ever done on a grand scale has and continues to come down to the 4 M's: money, memory, magic, or madness. I present to you PGP's theory of human history. I made up the 4 M's for this episode, but it makes sense. Humans, boiled down, are simple. Why do we do things? Greed, because we want to be remembered, because we're taken in by love or the thrill of something, or we're just downright crazy. So, there you go. So yes, I am guessing original purpose was most likely money and a form of memory, continuing on the family's lineage, ancestor worship. Which would mean the purpose hasn't changed much in more modern times. Chinese ghost marriage, while it is far less common today, does still occur, especially in more rural areas. It is less about romance and more about spiritual harmony, family duty, and maintaining social customs. The practice has been kept alive by various Chinese communities, but is more common among the Cantonese. Quite often, ghost marriage involves the union of 2 deceased people, though there have been examples of it between 1 living and 1 deceased. There are numerous reasons that have accrued since its early days for ghost marriage to continue taking place. First, to provide companionship in the afterlife. It's believed that unmarried spirits may become lonely or restless. Finding a bride or groom for them can ease the spirit's loneliness, and hopefully they won't cause grief or havoc for the living. This is especially important for men who died early and unmarried, as men in this society were traditionally expected to marry in order to have descendants. It was a means to an end. Descendants are the name of the game and vital to ancestor worship, bringing us to reason 2 behind ghost marriage: maintaining family honor and lineage. If a man can't marry, he can't have descendants, and therefore there will be no one to worship, bring offerings, or care for the dead after he is gone. Ghost marriage allows him to posthumously complete his duties. And as for descendants, there are ways. We'll talk about that. Third reason, to appease a spirit. Like the reason to provide companionship in order to stave off loneliness, sometimes the spirit is going to let you know. If they appear in a dream to a family member asking to be married, if sudden illness or misfortune befalls a family, this may be attributed to the deceased being unhappy and wanting this need to be met. Marry off your ghost. Restore household harmony once again. You would also want to appease them by following the tradition of marrying the older son off before the younger. So, even if the younger son is in the barrel, ready to fire, it's quick work on the part of the family to get a bride for the deceased elder boy before anything else happens to stay with tradition. Another reason to conduct a ghost marriage is more for the living's sake than for the dead: to create social or economic alliances by joining two families together, especially in those rural and farming areas. Before we move on to our next example, let's talk about controversy with the practice, which comes down to gender imbalance in China. Far more common was it for a deceased male to require a living or ghost bride rather than the other way around. Why? Well, because of the societal preference for sons over daughters. It makes for quite the imbalance, with more men, less women, thus more men dying unmarried and a higher demand all of a sudden for more women, living or dead, to marry their deceased men. Living because we need to carry on the family line with descendants. That will hopefully be sons over daughters because, ew. And then we can just start the cycle all over again. But these living brides would serve as social instruments on behalf of the family, taking on the bulk of domestic duties for her new husband's family, and as mother figure to the child the family adopts to be the deceased man's heir in order to carry on the family legacy and provide ancestor worship. Adopt? Yes, because the living bride of the deceased, in order to secure her new position in the husband's family and reserve her place on the family altar, she must take a vow of celibacy and remain so for the rest of her life. It's a hard sell to volunteer to be the living bride of a deceased man in China. The ghost bride, on the other hand, serves many of those reasons we just talked about. However, this particular arrangement, actually in more recent years, has led to reports of grave robbing, corpse trafficking, and murder of living women in order to create and sell the corpses to serve as the ghost brides. Because when marrying two deceased people to each other, part of the ceremony includes the woman's body being moved to be reburied next to her husband. The practice of ghost marriage in China, again, has grown much rarer in the modern era and is increasingly frowned upon and stigmatized, but is definitely still a thing in some areas. Next up, the Japanese also participate in ghost marriage, though the practice here is quite distinct from any other form of necrogamy in the world. It is unclear to me the prevalence of the early version of Japanese ghost marriage, which coupled a living person to a ghost. This type of marriage arrangement required quite the chunk of change as payment, as it was thought to carry some risk for the living party. Japanese beliefs at the time suggested that if the deceased liked their new partner a little too much, became too attached, they might end their life early and welcome their spirit to join them in the underworld. So, heavy on the compensation. Keep them hundies comin', baby. However, we see a significant shift in the practice following the annexation of the Ryukyu Islands in 1872. This shift really began to become widespread a little later in the 1930s due to the high number of men lost in battle and an increasing amount of trouble finding living brides for all of them. What was this dramatic shift? Instead of marrying the deceased to the living, the Japanese married them to dolls. The doll symbolizes companionship desired by the deceased and serves to placate the spirit and keep them company so they don't get disgruntled and violent. During the wedding ceremony, a photo of the deceased is placed inside a glass case that houses the doll, either a bride or groom doll. Sometimes both a bride and groom doll are present, with one acting as a placeholder for the deceased. The glass case sits in place for up to 30 years when it is believed the deceased person's spirit has reincarnated or moved on to another realm. At that point, the companion doll can then be removed and either ceremonially cremated or sent out to sea. These dolls are available in temples or can be purchased from regular old department stores for anywhere from $100 to $400. There are a couple of societies in Africa who have been studied and documented for their ghost marriage practices. Notably studied were the Nuer and the Atuat. Ghost marriage is very important to the Nuer because it provides a line of male heirs for a man who has died if he died without sons. When a sonless and wifeless man dies, his ghost is to be married to the wife of one of his brothers. Any children begot from that point are considered to be the heirs of the deceased man. This is really only a big to-do and big issue if the dead man had cattle, aka wealth. Traditionally, cattle would be passed down through the family line paternally and was used as bride wealth when a son was looking for a wife. In a case where the dead man died without a wife and maybe his brother doesn't have a wife, the dead man's cattle go to the brother and he is expected to find a living woman, give her family some of the cattle in exchange for her marrying his brother's ghost in order to give the ghost children. So, for the Nuer, ghost marriage was primarily about wealth and ensuring lineage. For the Atuat, the ghost marriage is similar with a few slight differences. Same as with the Nuer, if a childless, unmarried man died, a ghost marriage was performed in order to beget children that would then be considered the dead man's kids. One difference, if the man had a daughter, upon his death, the daughter could take on a male role, essentially acting as husband to a woman agreeing to be the wife. The woman playing the wife would then provide children. The article I read this in doesn't really detail how this comes to pass, but any children between the wife and the man's daughter would then be considered the children and heirs of the dead man. Are we confused yet? Same as the Nuer, some cattle would be exchanged as bride wealth. However, different from the Nuer people, a primary reason for the Atuats perpetuating ghost marriages really focused in on the carrying on of a family's name rather than the economic benefit. All that we know about the Atuat ghost marriage comes from a 1978 study of them. Other important details noted at the time by researchers was that the practice of ghost marriage within the Atuat society, while important and at times necessary, it did carry with it a bit of stigma and negativity. Any children who were born of these unions were negatively viewed within the society and referred to as orphans. That is awful. Another notable difference for the Atuat ghost marriage, they recognized that the spirit of the dead man might get lonely, restless, resentful of the living, or vengeful. Ghost marriage was a way to appease his ghost and protect themselves from illness and disaster. In 78, at the time of writing the article, it was noted that the practice of Ottawa ghost marriage had already significantly declined due to less men dying young and unmarried, so it might be a safe assumption to make that perhaps they don't practice it much or at all today. But it's always an option. There is some mention online that also references the Dinka people of Africa to ghost marriage, though there's not a ton of detail about it, but they are also said to practice and participate in necrogamy. The President of the Republic may, for serious reasons, authorize the celebration of the marriage in the event of the death of one of the future spouses, provided that a sufficient collection of facts unequivocally establishes his or her consent. In this case, the effects of the marriage shall date back to the day preceding that of the death of the spouse. Article 171 of the French Civil Code. France, my dears, is indeed the rarest of all countries, and that it is explicitly legal to marry a ghost. Well, a dead person. But if you're desperate to marry a ghost, have it on paper. I mean, you don't need to tell them that part. Just go make your case, get permission from the government, and there you go. If you die before you reach the age of 18 within the Balava community of India, you may see yourself participating in an arranged ghost marriage or preta kalyanam. This practice is thought to bring peace and happiness to the souls of the departed. Marriage in the community is seen as a major, important factor for a complete and full life. So, if someone dies before adulthood, this is a way their families can ensure they still experience and complete this life stage. One more example, the United States. Though posthumous marriage is not legal in the U.S., there is a form of ghost marriage within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that is recognized and performed today. Let me ask you something. Have you ever wished you could be married to your spouse for all of eternity? Have you ever hoped that someone might marry your spirit to your prior spouse to be together until the end of time, all without your consent? Well, the Mormon Church has a solution for you. It is a practice referred to as eternal marriage, celestial marriage, the new and everlasting covenant of marriage, a temple marriage, or a sealing. Until death do us part is out the window. It's forever and ever, baby. For all time and eternity, my little sugar plum. All right, I'm going to stop poking at it. Let's learn how this works. Who can enter a celestial marriage? A living woman and living man. A living woman or man to a deceased of the opposite sex only. Or a deceased woman to a deceased man. A man may be sealed to more than one of his wives at a time, though only one living one at any given time. But he may be sealed to any and all wives he was ever legally married to upon his death. A woman may be sealed to more than one husband at a time, but only once she herself and all of those husbands are dead. You do need permission from the church for a sealing to take place, and in order to do this, there must be proof that a valid marriage between the couple had ever taken place, even if it had been followed by a divorce at one point. During a posthumous sealing ceremony, if one of the spouses is living, a church member stands in as proxy for their deceased spouse. And if both spouses are deceased, 2 members of the church stand in as their proxies, eternally cementing 2 folks together who aren't even there. How romantic. You ever want to piss my ghost off? Try marrying me to someone for eternity without my consent. Flickering lights will be the very least of your concerns. So, these worldwide examples show us that while ghost marriage varies wildly in application and purpose based on society and belief systems, it's occurring not just in 1 or 2 cases. But these were kind of dry, right? Like sitting through an anthropology course. I minored in anthropology, actually. I don't know if I've ever told you guys that. I wanted to be a paleontologist, but my school didn't have a program, so I went with the Not important. Never mind. But yes, these examples seem to almost make sense due to motivations behind the society's doing of them. For lineage reasons, for wealth reasons, to create familial alliances, to ensure that the dead were not lonely and wouldn't become a hungry, hungry ghost. We've discussed the serious stuff, the customs, the corpses, the ancestral obligation. But relationships and marriage to ghosts is not some archaic foreign concept of the past, or only happening in some far corners of the globe, or only inside of strict dogmatic religions. There is a modern ghost relationship that has begun to take form in more recent years. And it couldn't look more different from what we've learned. It isn't about tradition or societal norms or practicality. It's about romance, passion, love, and even mind-blowing sex, allegedly. 30-year-old spiritual guidance counselor and medium Amethyst Realm shocked the world when she announced on live television she was engaged to be wed to her soulmate, Ray, a ghost she had met in 2018 while on a trip to Australia. She was walking around the bush, enjoying nature, when suddenly she felt an incredible presence and energy. This energy would stay with her throughout the trip. She said she was quite taken with whoever this was, like when you meet someone for the first time, but you just know. The energy is just right. That's how she felt about this invisible presence. So, when it came time to head back to the UK, she felt quite sad. Having felt spirit her entire life, she was familiar with the static nature of most, so she was sad to know she would be leaving the presence behind. Imagine her surprise once on the plane when she felt the same ghost right beside her. Once up in the air, her excitement had grown, and she wanted to do something about it, and so her and the spirit made their way to the restroom to wrestle for a little bit. This may seem shocking to some, but this was not a new experience for Amethyst, who had been having sex with ghosts since 2005. The ghost remained alongside Amethyst for the rest of the trip, making it all the way back to Bristol. They would begin dating. They had a relationship like any other. They went on dates, outings, holidays. They got intimate and spent quality time together. She felt touching, being held, being kissed. Though they had never fought, they experienced tense moments here and there. This was as normal a relationship as could be for her. And 9 months into their relationship, during a trip to Wookiee Hole Cave, he would propose to her, letting her hear his voice for the first time. Amethyst would accept. Wedding plans ensued. She even had begun research into having a child with him via a phantom pregnancy. But unfortunately, love does not always conquer all. She announced in 2020 during an interview with ITV's This Morning that the wedding was off, and her lover, who she had begun to call Ray by this point, was out for good, thanks to the black tourmaline she had left around the house, the incantation she recited, and cleansing of her property with sage. She said during her interview that things had gone sour during a vacation they had taken to Thailand. Ray had changed dramatically. I think maybe he fell in with a bad crowd when we were on holiday. He just started becoming really inconsiderate. He'd disappear for long periods of time. When he did come back, he'd bring other spirits to the house, and they'd just stay around for days. I think he started doing drugs and partying a bit much. At that point, Amethyst told the host when asked about future dating plans that she was just happy enough to be single for the time being. I myself am very curious what became of her, if she was ever able to find the relationship that she was after, or if, like Amanda Teague, she swore off ghostly romance for good. She just kind of fell off the map after this, but I do find her whole story really intriguing. Her relationship with ghosts had been extensive, being sensitive to this energy her entire life. She said the first sexual encounter she had with one took place 12 years prior, following her move into a new home with her partner at the time. She already knew the place was haunted and could feel the energy of someone around. She said it was comforting, not disturbing at all, and just there. Her partner's work kept him from home for weeks at a time, so maybe it was from loneliness, maybe out of curiosity and the time to explore. She decided one evening to seduce whatever spirit was in this house with her. She donned lingerie, laid down on the bed to waited long enough that she almost fell asleep, but then there it was, the familiar energy. The sex would begin more energetically, and as she grew used to it over the course of 3 years, she said it evolved into feeling physical sensations. She came to love whoever this was and felt that it loved her back. But 3 years in, her partner would return a day early from work and see the shape of a man through the bedroom window as he pulled into the driveway. Amethyst said this annoyed her to no end because the ghost had never shown itself to her, but her partner saw it. Thought she was cheating, and she was. But instead of ending things with the ghost, she ended things with him, and then would go on to sleep with 19 more spirits in the following dozen years, hoping to find one early on to settle down with, and almost getting exactly that by the time Ray came around. At one point, she had told a reporter she was never going back to men, that the experience with ghosts was far better than anything, declaring she would never go back to men because spirits left her more satisfied. The press had an absolute field day with this woman. I get it. I'll hand it to her, though. She seemed, for the most part, to have a good humor about it in all of her interviews. She never believed in ghosts until she came face to face with one. Or, to be more accurate, she didn't know what she thought and was skeptical. A singer, songwriter, poet, and self-described one-woman horror story who goes by the name of Brocard, claims she married a ghost. In 2021, on a dark and stormy night, Brocard tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep and upset over a recent argument with a friend. Suddenly, and out of nowhere, she felt a burning sensation overtake her heart. Though it didn't hurt, she began struggling to breathe. It then slowly moved down her body until it exited out her feet. At that moment, she sat straight up in bed as if propelled by an unseen force, panting, sweating, getting her breath back. She didn't know what was going on. The room grew icy cold. She reached for the lamp and felt her hand pushed away. Growing terrified, she reached for the lamp again, this time succeeding in illuminating the room, and saw a quick shape of a figure disappear. There was something there, an energy, a presence. Brocard was suddenly overtaken by a feeling of complete calm and peace. Then the presence evaporated, whispering words only Brocard could hear. "I love you." Over the course of the next few weeks, strange things would begin to happen around the house, leading her to understand there indeed was a presence in her house, a ghost. She opened herself up to communication with it. Her curiosity piqued, and shortly after this began to receive visions of a man. A brooding and devilishly handsome Victorian soldier with shoulder-length hair named Eduardo. Brocard would spend about 1.5 years with Eduardo, hanging around her home, them growing closer. She would feel at times the sensation of arms wrapping around her and touches. Eduardo would continue presenting himself to her, making his presence known, and perhaps making his possessive, darker side known in earlier moments where Brocard would find song lyrics she'd written about other men smudged or missing, or feel a sudden jolt when applying makeup before a night out on the town. But he did continue to make his suave moves on her too, winning her heart. They would enjoy candlelight dinners together, and he would communicate regularly in the physical by manipulating the flicker of the flames and putting sensations through her body. And when she wrote a song about him and their blossoming love affair called Haunted, he definitely communicated his approval. Early one morning, following the release of this song and a romantic make-up dinner following a row between the two, she awoke to a ring on her pillow. It wasn't hers, and she hadn't a clue where it had come from. Later that morning in the shower, she saw a question mark drawn in the steam on the glass. She went about her day, putting it to the back of her mind. But this all happened again the following day. It dawned on her, this was Eduardo, certainly, and he was proposing. Their ceremony was held in a small chapel in London, one of the only ones that would host a nuptials of this kind. The ceremony was recorded, clips of which can still be seen on Brocard's social. It was Halloween. Her song, Haunted, played as she strode down the aisle. Brocard, adorned in black dress and veil, said, "I do." Eduardo, we must presume, stood beside her. When it came time for his part, the priest stared expectantly at the empty space, and following a pregnant pause, Brocard offered up, "He said I do." And the deed was done. But not really, because that's not really how legal marriages work. But no matter, they were married in their hearts, okay? Now, what you can't see from the video, aside from the groom, is Marilyn Monroe in the gathered congregation. We're going to move on quickly from that, about as quickly as the end to their happily ever after was ushered in. Things swiftly went downhill following the wedding. During their honeymoon, Eduardo continuously got too drunk, which Brocard didn't appreciate. Back home, she quickly tired of his unsettling and incessant fascination with Marilyn Monroe. He became increasingly possessive and mercurial, swinging wildly between warm and intense to outright threatening and mean. He began disappearing for long stretches of time, and 3 months into their married life, Brocard discovered Eduardo was cheating on her. He began to return from his disappearances reeking of Chanel No. 5, Marilyn Monroe's signature scent. Finally, she'd had enough. Not even a year into their marriage, it was clear they needed a divorce. As things progressed, she had tried to communicate with him, but he would hear none of it. She had attempted to set boundaries with him, which only seemed to infuriate him, and he began to torment her with the phantom sound of a screaming baby. And so, left with no other options, Brocard returned to the chapel in which they were wed and agreed to an exorcism, clips of which you can watch in the banger she wrote about their love's demise, called Just Another Anthem. Since their divorce, the couple don't see too much of each other, though there have been some awkward moments. During a trip to Los Angeles, Brocard stayed in the famous Roosevelt Hotel on Hollywood Boulevard. Sitting out by the pool, she noticed the ghost of Marilyn Monroe sitting across from her. Not that unusual. Monroe is seen there all the time, and it may have been a cool moment for Brocard, maybe an opportunity for closure and forgiveness of the woman who destroyed her marriage. But then her ex-husband suddenly appeared and, ignoring his previous wife altogether, strode across the water to greet Monroe. But a breakup is always hard. There's going to be bumps along the way. Brocard has spent time discovering herself and exploring new pursuits. That is healthy. That's a healthy thing to do. Go rediscover yourself. She is now a paranormal investigator and visits numerous locations around the world. While visiting a coven in Romania, she discovered a bit of a witchy side of her own and utilizes her newfound powers of intuitively knowing things about people and foreseeing events in the future. While filming a TV show pilot for a series documenting her visits to haunted locations, she adopted a possessed clown doll from the Clown Museum in Nevada. According to her, the doll made Eduardo exceptionally jealous. So, seems like he might still be hanging around to some extent. It also seems, as of the most recent interviews of her, they may have actually been able to come to some form of amends. Or maybe since the divorce and Brocard rediscovering herself, she's able to see the whole situation in a new light. Because after all was said and done, Eduardo stopped appearing to her as an unhappy, brooding, mercurial spirit, and instead now wears a smile on his face and maintains a calm demeanor, leading her to believe that in all actuality, perhaps everything was orchestrated and went exactly as it was supposed to. Maybe Eduardo was her guardian spirit the whole time, whose real reason for entering her life and putting her through all of it was to lead her on the path to where she is now and becoming a powerful witch. She regularly connects and communicates with spirits now. What a wild story, right? That Marilyn Monroe, man, stealing people's ghost husbands and whatnot. All right, final one. This one is relatively recent and currently ongoing. I remember catching this woman's early videos on TikTok years ago, and a lot of information that she shared really resonated with me. While she is not currently married to a ghost, hundreds of years ago, she actually was, for a second, technically. And this ghost found her again in this lifetime, and they are currently in a relationship. It's like somewhere in time, reversed. Rebecca Carmichael is a medium out of Wilmington, North Carolina. Wilmington is incredibly historic, incredibly haunted, and she used to be a ghost guide for a local tour. She says that she denied being a medium for a long time, thought the things that she was seeing in her mind were the result of an overactive imagination, but was convinced of her abilities when a medium on one of her tours told her that there were ghosts trying to communicate with her. When she began to post reenactments and skits of the conversations she was having with regular spirit characters that she had encountered, her TikTok took off. One ghost in particular was a soldier for the British Army who had been stationed in Wilmington during the Revolutionary War, a Welshman named Rupert. Rebecca often walked home at night following her tours, and one night Rupert asked to walk her home. Unsure at first, she did accept, and Rupert would continue to walk her home every night as their connection would grow stronger. She includes all of the twists and turns of their budding friendship-turned relationship, but I am going to fast forward a bit toward present day. I have linked her playlist of the ghost skits that she has done. The Rupert reenactments are all labeled, super easy to find. Go take a watch and follow Rebecca. The skits are awesome, and she's lovely. She's a lot of fun. So, she had already been dating Rupert when she met Catherine, a fellow TikTok creator. Catherine also makes paranormal content, investigates the paranormal, had some psychic ability themselves, and after meeting Rebecca, the two decided to collaborate. They hit it off smashingly. The connection was there, and so the three of them decided to start dating. Three, yes, Rebecca, Catherine, and Rupert are in a polyamorous relationship. Rebecca says she didn't have to alert Catherine of Rupert's presence. Catherine picked up on him all on their own and was very accepting of the entire arrangement from the beginning. Though Catherine and Rupert do not have a romantic connection in the throuple, they do have their own kind of friendly connection and do have discussions and joke with each other in their own ways. The three of them were featured on just a couple of shows last year discussing their unique situation. You can also learn more by following both Rebecca and Catherine on TikTok or by checking out Rebecca's podcast. All of those links are in the sources list. Last detail about this, and the one that I used to barely connect by the skin of my teeth, this example to ghost marriage. Early in Rupert and Rebecca's friendship,
He revealed to her that they had been married when he was stationed in Wilmington. He ended up passing away, and she would as well not too long after. But obviously, he was still around until she did so. Technically, she was married to a ghost at that time. And now they get to be in this relationship in her current lifetime because he never left. He told her he recognized her soul. How sweet and cool is that? I love that. For the final portion of today's show, I want to spend some time digging into alternate explanations, some psychology behind this phenomenon, and considerations that we might make when we encounter someone claiming a relationship and even marriage to the spirit of a deceased person. So, I spent a good amount of time walking through ghost marriage as a practice through the lens of time and also different societies. Those examples come with quite a bit of practicality to them. They were often a solution to socio-cultural issues that may arise with a death. How do we keep the family line going? How do we keep or bestow wealth? How do we create alliances and become stronger and more secure? And also, how do we honor the dead and ensure that they are happy, that harmony reigns? Ghost marriage provided an answer to a lot of things for those people. But when we consider modern day and westernized accounts of ghost relationships and marriage, there's a dramatic shift behind the practice. We see the introduction of romance and a one on one connection with a ghost for the sake of an actual relationship. It is, of course, easy enough to jump right to things like delusion, hallucination, psychological issues, or the other side of that coin, overt deception, trickery, hoaxing, trying to make a quick buck, trying for those 15 minutes. It's easy to assume the worst possible explanations when we ourselves have not had a particular experience and it does not align with our understanding of reality. And some of these explanations could easily be applied to today's examples. Amanda Teague experienced extreme loss that would send anyone over the edge, the loss of her infant son. There was nothing wrong, no warning, no signs, nothing she could have done. He died from SIDS. Was there 1 minute, gone the next. Taken from her. I cannot imagine the grief. The grieving mind has the potential to do some incredible things. Bereavement hallucinations are actually quite common. Studies show a shockingly high prevalence of these particular hallucinations, ranging from 30 to 60% of widows. Yes, widows, because that has been who most of the studies, which there haven't been many, but most of them have focused on. So we don't actually know if the effect is similarly high with death of children, siblings, animals, etc., but obviously we can presume it happens. People report seeing, feeling, hearing, sensing their deceased loved one not too long following the loss. Could Amanda's mind, stricken with grief, have created from scratch someone to be there for her, to ease her grief, to ease her burden? Loneliness literally alters the brain. It can activate pain centers similar to physical injury. When 18-year-old newly engaged Amethyst Realm was left alone in a big empty house for weeks at a time due to her partner's work schedule, when intimacy and social connection was absent for such prolonged and continuous periods, did her brain do her a solid and invent a connection that felt real? Was she coping? The power of belief caused by anything is incredibly powerful. If you truly believe something to be true, to be real, your brain rewires itself to support that belief, and it can seem to have real world effects. Consider the placebo effect, where folks have gotten better after taking sugar pills because they believed it was real medicine. Could the belief in a ghostly presence, one providing companionship, emotional safety, love, friendship, become self-reinforcing? And when it comes to the physical aspects of these relationships, touching, hugging, intimacy, the brain is capable of creating similar sensations in the absence of external stimuli. Maybe there is trickery and a desire for attention or money that's involved. Amanda Teague wrote a book about her experience with Jack. Brocard wrote a couple of songs inspired by her marriage to Eduardo, went on numerous shows, appeared in countless articles and interviews. Her music career and public persona is doing better than ever. The free publicity certainly didn't hurt. But when you consider the amount of pain and suffering involved in being known as that crazy woman who's in a relationship with a ghost, the risk that is inherent in making a story like that public, the amount of time, effort, and personal money you spend to further a long-term lie like this without any guarantee it's going to pan out for you in the end, I do have a hard time settling on just a simple skeptical explanation. Amanda Teague did write a book, yes. Have you ever heard of it? Probably not. Did it do all that well? I don't know. I've never heard of it. Did she move on to another ghostly lover or continue her quest for a place in the spiritual field in order to scam money with fake readings or Wiccan consultations? No. In fact, she left all spiritual stuff behind and cautions anyone interested in getting involved or becoming romantic with spirits to steer clear. She also spent a buttload of money in order to even marry Jack. Weddings are expensive, dudes. Imagine renting out an entire boat just so you can legally marry someone who nobody believes exists. Amethyst Realm. Was her ghost the answer to her loneliness? She mentioned during an interview that with that initial experience, though it happened in different areas, it only ever took place inside of the house. Carbon monoxide leaks and sleep paralysis have been suggested as explanations many times for reports of sex with ghosts. But I doubt the leak followed her after moving from that house. And it doesn't sound like she was in the throes of sleep paralysis while joining the Mile High Club with her final lover, Ray. As to loneliness, she claims to have had multiple see-through partners over the span of 12 years. I assume loneliness goes out the window when you can basically have company whenever you want. Rebecca Carmichael's ghost partner, Rupert, his existence and presence was confirmed multiple times by multiple people. Her other partner, Catherine, can and does speak to him regularly using investigation equipment. And from what I've read and heard on her show, she'll be the first to say she didn't necessarily want to share this story. It's private. And she certainly didn't share it for publicity or fame because, again, who wants to be known as that crazy lady who's dating a ghost? All of this said is definitely not to proclaim that I believe any one of these stories over the others, or to encourage you to believe any one of these stories. Believe whatever you want. And now, hopefully, by the end of this one, if I've done my job, you have more than enough information to make a fair assessment and understand it a little more deeply and form a well-informed opinion of your own on the matter. As always, I hope you'll share that with me, along with your thoughts on anything else that we covered. paranormgirlpod@gmail.com. Hopefully, you have at least learned some awesome new trivia and stories to bore people with from this one. It's not every day you learn that people do, in fact, marry ghosts, but also that they've been doing it for literally thousands of years. The paranormal is weird. Reality is far weirder, dudes. One thing I would like to encourage you to believe, or at least consider: love is love. If someone comes to you claiming a relationship with a ghost, whether you believe them or not, whether it's real or not, what does it matter? It's real for them. If it ain't hurting them or others, I don't know. Consider being happy for them before calling them nuts. Love is love, baby, whether you understand it or not. That's all I got today. Join me for a final note. I'm really glad I got to fit this one in before we wrap the season. I realized by the end that this one says a lot more about the living than it does the dead. So we'll just call this one a guilty pleasure for the fun of it kind of deep dive. One angle I didn't get to explore today, and I'm totally bummed, was looking at it from the ghost's point of view. I had questions, y'all, like, would a ghost want to date or marry the living? Is there always an alternate motivation behind a choice like that, like using their living partner for their energy? Or would they ever choose to do it out of sheer love? And what about the sexy stuff? Can a non-physical being perform a highly physical feat like that? Or is it less physical than the living counterparts are perceiving it? Were any of these ghosts at all? Or something else? Might have been something else. Send me your thoughts on that. On our next and final dive before the season conclusion, we will be taking a more serious look at ghost pets and animals. Animals have such a special place in my heart, and I think that'll be a really nice way to wrap up our year-long exploration. If you enjoy the show, consider leaving a high rating and review of what you like about it. Other great ways to support include following the show at Paranorm Girl Pod on social, becoming a member on Patreon, and one thing I never remembered to talk about, but I'm gonna remember today. Paranorm Girl has a merch store, and it offers some pretty cool stuff, if I do say so myself, with limited edition colors. All links can be found below. Catch me live next week, Tuesday, August 5th, 8 p.m. Central on YouTube at Beer, Booze, and Boogeymen, Sleep Paralysis and Its Demons. Were you sleep deprived, high on melatonin, ate cheese before you went to bed, and you saw something strange? That's the topic of discussion. Give us a call during the show, 208-717-1611, or shoot your story ahead of time to ghost.beer, and we'll read it on air for you. Really appreciate you all tuning in today. Have a great week, and I will catch up with you next time. Until then, stay safe, keep the nightlight on, and sleep with one eye open.